Hello and welcome back to the Finding Your Feet podcast, a podcast show dedicated to helping you get closer to your true authentic self by helping you find your feet in life.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we are joined by Hannah Mayfield. She is a transformational coach who shares financial education for women who want to grow their wealth. So we brought her on to talk all about everything to do with money, literally everything. So a basics beginner guide to managing your money, how you can start investing today, like the myths around it, that we always think like, oh, investing is just for people that are really wealthy. We debunk all of that. She gives really practical advice. She talks about like how your emotions will, run your money story, all of this jazz. So you're going to leave this episode feeling like a rich bitch and you're going to be ready to start investing your money and looking after your wealth and creating a better life for future you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we love making you all feel really empowered from within, and finances and money are just a huge thing that go into that. So at the end of this episode, you're going to feel really empowered around your money.
But firstly, let's have a little check-in. How is your well-being, guys? How's your mental health? Because we know we go through these periods in life where we all struggle with our mental health at certain points. And when we're in those positions, the best thing that you can do for yourself is just to reach out for guidance and support from a professional licensed therapist to help you on your journey and get you back to your baseline of happiness. We are so happy to introduce you to BetterHelp, who is our partner on the podcast, and they are a professional, secure online counseling service who will set you up with your own unique therapist in just 48 hours of creating an account.
Yes, BetterHelp's mission is to help you start living a happier life from today, and they really show that with how easy and accessible they make therapy. So it's all done online from the comfort of your own home. Wherever you are in the world right now, you can access it as long as you have an internet connection. And they have a huge range of expertise, so whatever you feel like you need the support for, they can find the right person for you. And if you are matched with someone that you're not happy with, you can actually change for free until you're happy. And not only that, BetterHelp are also a lot more affordable than traditional offline counseling and are also offering our listeners 10% off your first month of therapy.
So just head to the link betterhelp.com/finding your feet. That's betterhelp.com/find your feet to get 10% off your entire first month of online therapy. And if you are in a difficult financial position, depending on your circumstances, you can let them know that and they will give an additional discount on top of that. They really want to remove all the barriers to you becoming the happiest version of you today.
But that's all for now, and let's get into the episode with Hannah.
So welcome to the show, Hannah. We're really excited to have you on today covering a topic that we have never ever discussed before, but it is so important. And when you approached us to come on the show, we were literally like, oh my God, yes. We're so excited to talk about money, finance, and why it's important. So if you could just start off by telling us a little bit about what it is that you do and how you got into it and why you're so passionate about finance and educating women about building wealth and everything that goes into it.
Yeah, so my path I call myself a money mentor and like a bit of a wealth strategist, basically. And I bring in, I guess, some of the elements of life coaching because money can be so personal and what we want to do to it depends what we want to do with our lives as well. So there's not really like a one strategy thing. But I think wealth education is really important. So I'm more of like a teacher about these things as well. And my journey into it was like pretty accidental and not like I was never interested in finance. I used to work in fashion buying, but my dad passed away when I was 22 and I inherited money, and then I had to like learn what to do with this money basically and make it mean something and like make it for my life to help me in my life. I just really wanted to make it meaningful, and I avoided it for a really long time, and I didn't realize I had so many weird emotions about money as well. So there was a lot to unpick behind the emotional side of money, not only like with all the grief and emotions that come with inheriting money, but also just like all the weird stuff I'd learned growing up about money. And when I kind of realized that, I was like, oh my God, I think about money so strange. And then there was the practical side of like, what is investing? Like, what can I do with this to make it grow and to like bring me an income? And that was really confusing as well, and quite hard to figure out because there's so much contradictory advice. And I just didn't know anyone in my peers that spoke about that, and then I kind of tried to find people to speak about it, and they were like old men, and like that's really nice, and like gave me advice, but it was like kind of hard sometimes to crack into it. And now now I really understand it, and I have a strategy, and I like know what works, and I really want to share it, and I love sharing it with people and with clients, because I'm like, oh my god, if you can unlock just like a little bit of financial knowledge and education about investing, it can just be so powerful for your life. And like money is this really important tool that we can use to create these really meaningful lives. And it's really important that we think about it, because we spend a lot of time maybe unconsciously thinking about money and how do we earn it and like making decisions. And when we bring it forward into like consciously, okay, what am I doing with this money? Everything can really shift quite powerfully in your life, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we've never ever spoke about it on the show before, but it is something that is literally so important, because money can be like such a huge stress for you, or it can be like the greatest tool if you are able to grasp it properly to like build a life of your dreams, of like freedom, and in whatever way that means to you. I think most people assume like freedom means if you're financially free, like you're super rich and you can just do anything, but you can have like a unique meaning to it, and it can, like I said, literally change your life. So before we get into like the practical side of the questions about like what is investing, all of that kind of stuff, practical tips that the listeners can take away, we want to talk about like the emotional relationship to money first. And you obviously just said there that you noticed that you had like a strange emotional relationship to money. I think most of us do, but like you said, we don't ever like realize it. So how, like, can we talk about how important it is to understand your emotional relationship to money? How can we start to like bring awareness to this? How much is like our childhood and beliefs, like from what we observed growing up, how does that impact how we, experience money now in our adult life? How can we make the unconscious beliefs about money conscious?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's good to note that we don't really learn about money consciously. Like I didn't really learn about in school about taxes and money and how things work. So like a lot of what we learn in society, or like the way I grew up in England, was like through osmosis of just like random bits and pieces that you pick up. And I just want to say that because I think it's important. There's a lot of women come to me and they're like, I'm really bad with money. And I'm like, that's not a personality trait. Like people aren't born from the womb like good or bad with money. It's just a skill set, and you just learn it as you go along. And we've never probably learned about it in a useful way. We just learn about it, what we pick up, bits and pieces. So to start, it's really good to think about, like you said, when you were growing up, like what was said around money, and like what were the behaviors that were kind of maybe happening in the household or place you grew up. And then can you kind of see how that correlates with your life? So for example, like I grew up with a lot of that kind of money doesn't grow on trees, and a lot of like there was genuine scarcity growing up. And then if you're in the self-development world, people talk about scarcity mindset, but like yeah, sometimes there just aren't enough financial resources, and you have to be. So I've always been quite frugal, and that's something because that's just how I grew up, and that was a pattern of like, oh, I can't spend, and I would feel like uncomfortable spending over certain amounts. And I realized that my conditioning is kind of always pick the like cheapest option, or like the kind of minimum viable option, and like to kind of maybe sometimes sacrifice my comfort. And other people might be the opposite. It might be like, oh, money comes in and it's there to be spent quickly, so I'll just like assume that you might notice like, things come in and then they go out, and you'll just like spend month to month, and you won't worry about things that
Yeah.
much, and you'll just pick things up. And then maybe when you look back, you might be like, oh, maybe I should have put some more in savings. So there are like these different patterns that are all super, super unique. And then on the earning side, everyone will have a totally different concept of what like a lot of money is and what you think you might be able to earn. So I remember when I finished uni and I was like looking at jobs, and I knew I wanted to work in fashion, and I was like looking at the salaries of what a fashion buyer was, and I was like, oh my god, that is loads. Like that felt like so much to me. But other people might look at it and be like, no, that's like really not a high salary. So have a think about, what do you believe is possible in terms of how much you can earn. And that's a really interesting one to like think about, or actually put a number on things and be like, oh, what number feels like really stretchy, of like, oh, I could never earn that much, because people do earn that much, and often it's just just our set point is what we're used to from our personal experiences. So having a little think about that set point as well, we might find quite interesting.
Yeah.
Such great tips there for people to get thinking, especially thinking about salaries. But for someone that's maybe listening now thinking, okay, maybe I heard beliefs like that money doesn't grow on trees. I feel like that's a really common one for people to hear when they're growing up, or these financial blueprints that they might have absorbed growing up. How can they actually begin to change them around? If they're like become aware of them, how can they begin to change the way their subconscious is actually looking at money?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been quite a slow process, and that, it'd be nice if there was like a quick win, but actually I think it is like just bringing attention to it slowly, and then kind of if you're like, actually, I really want to pay attention to money and change this in my life, really absorb yourself in things like books and podcasts and listen to people talk about wealth and money and get different perspectives on it as well. So like listen to different people talking about money, and then you can kind of like step out of your perspective and your viewpoint with it. And so really like what you're consuming can be really powerful, or what you're learning and who you're learning from, because you will just have one viewpoint probably on money. And then for me, like listening to other people really opened it up for me. I was like, oh, okay, they think about it like this. And I love finding people, and I love realizing how people think. Like that's like my thing. So when I'm like, oh, they think about money like this unlimited resource, and people just pick how much they want to earn and then work backwards from that number. Like that's interesting. When I grew up, it was like you get a salary and then you like fit your life into that number. But actually, you can choose your life. So I always say it's really interesting. Think about your dream life and then literally cost it up, like put the price on it and then figure out how you can earn that amount, which is like totally flipping it. It's a totally different way of thinking about it. So yeah, like
Yeah.
get other perspectives on money, like listen to things about it and just like commit to this being something that's important.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's like such an interesting way to think about it, to be like, well, how much will my dream life cost? Because then you feel more empowered to actually make it happen. Because I think most of us just assume, okay, you get a job, especially like women, because like they always say like that we're not, like we don't negotiate our salaries as much as like what men do. We always go in lower than like what men do. And I know that a lot of your work is focused on helping women with their finances. But yeah, I guess like literally thinking how much my dream life costs and then working backwards makes you more empowered to actually take that action to like make it real. You feel like you could make it real once you like think about it like that, rather than when you go the other way, which is like, oh, get a salary then fit your life into it. You just feel like you've got to just accept what you have, and like that's just kind of it.
Yeah.
It's like you're making the rules.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because sometimes not as much as you think as well. Because you might think, oh my God,
Yeah.
that would be like crazy. And you price it up, you're like, oh, or you might look at it and be like, oh, that's big. And then that's interesting to see what your perspective on it as well.
Yeah. So a lot of your work is like, obviously you aim to help women. Why has educating women on finance and working with them like one-to-one as clients and all of this, why is this work like important for you? Why did you want to like target women? And we know like everyone knows about like the wealth, the gender pay gap and all stuff like that. But like why was it really important to you?
I think we're women, and everything I speak about is from like my lived experience, but we're really new to money. So even I was thinking back about when I grew up and like my mum and my friends' mums and like what careers people had, or if women had businesses, and it's actually quite new for what this in terms of like generations for women to be even able to have control over their finances. I think it was only like the 70s that women could get a credit card in their own name. Like things have always been, been so dependent on men. So we're like really new to it, and that's there's a lot to learn, and I think we just need more people talking about it because it does really change. And I just really see that with people I work with, and also like just friends or even like just any conversations. It's just not spoken about, and it's not spoken about culturally and probably like society as well, because it can be a bit like rude or taboo, or people might not want to talk about it because they're like, oh, I actually don't really understand it, and it's kind of feels more comfortable to avoid it. So just like bring it into the light, because it is important, and the only way we're going to be able to close these gaps is if women start investing, women start believing they can earn more money, what other people are earning, like, and it just stops becoming such a like secret like a secret thing.
Yeah, yeah, because it is like always seemed like taboo, and like you don't really sit there and talk with your friends about what's in your bank account or like how
Yeah.
you like managing your money or anything like that. Um, so yeah, it is important for us all to like talk about it, because you just spend the same way like when if we sit there and like go like, oh yeah, I found this amazing pair of jeans from this brand. You like share things like that, and you know, sharing
Tips and
information
stuff.
like helps, but we never ever talk about finances. But I think, yeah, probably because there's such like an emotional thing attached to them, and like, I don't know, shame as
Yeah, I was gonna
well.
say that. Yeah, I feel like there's so much shame attached to money. And on that topic of shame, so like this is something I love speaking about actually, and like kind of thinking over. So like we wanted to move on and ask you about how important it is, as you just said, for women to share about money and like the money they've earned. And like I see a lot on Instagram where you might see like coaches or people that are quite confident in their money, and they might share how much money they've earned. And there's always kind of like two ends of the spectrum. Like some people love it and they feel really empowered, and then some other people are like, why would you show off? Like you don't need to, it's not all about money, like there's quite like different emotions attached to it. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's more down to what the person that's kind of like viewing this, like what their thoughts are on money? Or do you think it's really important that we all just step forward and start speaking more about our finances?
I think it's totally up to you what you're comfortable with, and some people will be really comfortable sharing and some people won't, and either's fine. Like you to be really confident in money and empowered, you can be quietly confident. You don't have to be like talking about it and sharing about it. You can just have just know what you're talking about, and then maybe in spaces that feel safe with good friends, you might say, oh, this is what I've done with my money, by the, and it might just come up and be, it doesn't have to be a big public thing if you don't want it to be. And I know, like personally, I found it really useful seeing business owners that are women talk about how much they earn, because I just didn't even know that was possible unless those people had spoken about it. Like, I wouldn't have known what the kind of potential of certain industries were. And I know the same. I've seen some things on Instagram of people talking about working in tech, and they're like, tell some, this, tell people your salary and things like that. It's really helpful to see, but you might not be comfortable with sharing, and that's fine as well. And that doesn't mean you're any less confident with money, or it's less important to you. It's just always going to be personal preference of how you roll with it, basically.
Yeah, I think some of the people that get annoyed by seeing some women like maybe share how much they've earned or whatever, they get triggered by it. It's because you'd want that to be you, but there's some sort of limitation in your mind that makes you think that that's not possible. So then when they're stood there like, yeah, I've done this, you're like, if you're feeling that trigger, it's because there's something deeper going on within you, and there isn't actually a reason why that couldn't be you as well. But we always talk about like in terms of like manifestation and stuff like that, having expanders, and they're
Mm.
just people that kind of like lift the blinkers off you and like sort of lift the limits off your mind by actually physically showing you what's possible, because you're seeing somebody else in the world like in black and white. They've like achieved this, done this, created this. So it's like, well, it is possible. There's another human there that's done that. So even if someone listening now might not like seeing some women sharing their salaries and stuff like that, it can actually also subconsciously be planting little seeds in the back of your head of like, well, that could be you, whether you're like consciously realizing it yet or not. We'd love to move on now onto like the practical questions on finance. So like giving everybody that's listening like tips and tricks that they can take away today and start to really change how they manage their money and how they view it. But you're obviously very big into investing, so we'd love to just talk about what actually is investing, what are the different types of investing, like how all the different ways that you can invest your money and make your money work for you.
Yeah. So when I talk about investing, I suppose I'm coming from like quite a traditional definition of investing, of being owning assets and spending your money on owning assets. So there are lots of different types of assets, but a few might be things like stocks and shares, bonds, rental properties, cryptocurrency is a bit of a controversial one because it's not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, so it's not maybe classed an asset for some people. Some people will class it as one. So basically, things that have our money working for us while we sleep, and those assets might generate money in terms of income, or they might generate money for us in terms of something called capital gain, which is when something goes up in value. So there's different ways that different assets work and different ways they will make money for us. But basically, I think it's so important is because if you have money in assets that's making money for you, that can free up your time later down the line, because it's kind of income that's coming into you, money that's flowing into you without you working. And I'm really passionate about that because I've had to take time off to care for loved ones. I've had carers leave. I've had to have time off for grief. I've also had time off for traveling. So I'm like, oh, the time freedom, and like time is the one thing that you're never going to get back. And that's why I'm so, yeah, I kind of want to share this thing that, oh, investing and buying assets is a way that you can buy back your time, essentially.
Yeah, because I think we also like our automatic conditioning of just like how the world works is to just think, well, you just make your money by like giving someone your time, basically. So whether you're on an hourly rate or just even like a salary, they're essentially paying for your time. And you kind of get, because that's like the typical way that you do make money. It's like you just, I don't know, you just assume, you just like don't then look outside of what else is possible. And you also assume that investing is only for people that already have a lot of money. Like that's what people always think. So I'd love to get like tips from you now on someone that's listening that's like a complete beginner to like finances, talking about in this way, an investment, and they're just on like a normal salary, like just the average salary for the UK, like in their 20s 30s. Maybe they've got like money to save and things like that, but they're just in the normal like sort of finance bracket of like the kind of average person. They're not like have like huge wealth. But how can they start investing today? Like what's the most sustainable long-term way to do it? Because I think as well, we always hear in the news about, like you just mentioned briefly there, about like crypto and stuff like that, but we know that like stuff like that goes up and down. You always hear stories about people that have made loads of money from crypto really quickly. You just think it's really risky. You just assume investing to people that are really rich, or if you like, because it's like high risk, but obviously that isn't true because there's things like compound interest. So like what is like your investment, what's your philosophy on investment, and how can someone that is just pretty just normal salary, how can they start investing? Say like what can switching into that kind of mindset do for their like livelihood?
Yeah, really good question. And yeah, I love that you've called out that one of the big myths about investing is you have to have loads of money, because you just don't. And that's what I love about this day and age that we're living in, is it's like the ways to will build wealth are a bit more democratized, because if you have a phone and you can download an app, there are apps that there's no minimum investment criteria, so you can do it. But the gap is normally just in the wealth education, or even like knowing that it's a thing. It's like people don't talk about it, but actually if you want to do it, there are ways to do it now that are way easier. And like probably back in the day you would need huge amounts, and now there are even investing apps that round up your spare change. So yeah, that is really an option. And the thing that's really important to understand is, with investing, that time can be really powerful. So a great place to start is if you have a look at stocks and shares, because things like, say if you wanted a rental property, you're going to need quite a lot in the bank deposits and etc etc, but stocks and shares you can do in really small amounts. And so my strategy is always long term. So like just put it in and just leave it to compound. You mentioned compounding. So compound is how like your money makes more money. So say if you put £1 in and that gets a 10% return, then you've got £1.10 there. But then your £1.10 will get a 10% return. So then you've got, that makes 11p instead of the first time it made 10p. So like everything gets exponentially bigger, basically. That's why time is so valuable. And people always say to me that, oh, I'm going to start investing like when I have more money. And what I would love to share is that like the pound you have today is more powerful than the pound you'll have in 5 years. Even if you have more pounds in 5 years, it's like, because the time is so important. And like time in the market is like really important. And when I say the market, I'm talking about stocks and shares. And a stock is basically you owning a slither of a company. So it's like if you can own an Apple iPhone, you could own a bit of Apple, basically. So you would just own a tiny slither of that company. And then if that company goes up in value, your like little sliver of it will go up in value as well. And then if it makes profits, you can get a profit based on your little slither that you own. So that's it on like a really simple level. And basically, on average, if you look at kind of 20-year averages of the stock market as a whole, it goes up. I roughly use the rule of thumb like 8% every year. So it's really like up and down in between. But in general, the trajectory has always been growth of about 8% a year on average. So I think it's important to say that because you probably just have no, like, I just used to have no idea. Like, to me, the stock market felt like really risky. And I was like, oh my God, it's like gambling. And I just didn't get it. And it is quite hard to get from an outsider perspective. But if you look at it and like, oh, actually, in average, it does go up by this amount every year. And the key is really having your money in like lots of different. So if you hear stories that people lost everything, it's probably because they maybe invested in like one company or like one thing and then that thing failed. But actually, if you have like you own lots of different little slithers of companies, so lots of little slithers of stocks and shares, then if one company fails, then that's fine because you've got lots of others. So diversification, that's really important. So I hope, yeah, if there's anything that you want me to, I hope that kind of makes sense. If there's anything that sounds like
Yeah,
not
no.
clear, but that's quite a lot of information. I am aware of that and I'm aware it's confusing, but I kind of want to give it to you. So maybe you might have to like listen back to
No. Yeah,
No.
no, it's not confusing at all. It's like really clear. Sorry, you're going to say something.
No, I think it's really good and clear, like Grace just said. It's good to understand that you can actually do it in different companies as well, because I think there's a lot of fear, like you said, around investing. That people think, well, if I'm investing in a company, can I just lose it? I feel like that when I was growing up, if I was ever heard anything about investing, it was always like, oh, well, could you just put a load of money in something and then just lose it? So I think to kind of put that fear aside and know that you can actually put in different ones is good. But just so we can give our listeners like really practical advice, if they were listening now thinking, okay, I want to go ahead with this, do you have like any companies or any stocks and shares companies that you actually recommend? And like you said, do you recommend for a first timer to maybe put it in a few different ones, or do you think maybe just start with one and just see kind of how you go? And also, sorry, if how it works, like does it work kind of like a savings account? So could somebody like set up a direct debit and just keep putting it in monthly and not have to worry about saving up money and then just putting a big chunk in?
Yeah, so I don't tend to recommend specific platforms. But if you have a little research of, and you're going to have to look at things like how much you have to put in, because some of them will have like minimum criteria. And then definitely, yeah, doing it on a direct debit is actually the best way to do it because it's kind of automated and a lot of it is behavior of how much you're putting into it. So if you just automate it and you don't have to think about it and it just doesn't even touch your account, that's like the best way to do it. Let me think about what else you said, how practical ways to get started.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just asked about the practicality. No, that covers that. That's fine. And then, yeah, I think it was just the direct debits, if they can just set it
Yeah.
up monthly to make it, like you said, just then you don't even need to think about it. It's going every month. And then, like you said, each year it's going up. And I have heard that before that, yeah, you just, with investments, you just need to leave it and let it do its work rather than taking out, like
Yeah.
kind of like a savings account.
Yeah, so it's really different to a savings account. That was the thing I wanted to say. Thanks for reminding me, because there is risk involved and it will fluctuate. Whereas in your savings account, like the amount doesn't change, whereas the value of your investments might fluctuate over time. But what I would say to that is so my strategy is always long term, so I just like leave it there. And say like right now, things are happening in the world that like the value of what I'm looking at, it looks like the numbers like gone down. But it's really important to understand that I still own the same amount of, like slithers in companies. So it's only gone down if I sold today. But if I just keep it, like if I sell it in a year, it might be worth a different amount. So that's a really important like mindset piece to have. It's like, oh, I haven't lost money unless I sell it, because I still own the pieces of, say if it's stocks or shares, I still own the pieces of those companies. It's just, if I like, the price when you log onto your app might just be different. That's like the price what it's worth if you sold today. So that's, yeah, really important to understand, because it can be probably quite scary if you like put in 100 quid and then you look at it and you're like, oh my God, there's 90, it's 90 now. And that's like, you don't have that with a savings account. And it's the reason that people do it, and the reason people take on this risk. And I just want to speak to it feeling really risky. But you would never look at your pension and be like, that's really, oh my God, my pension's so risky. That's kind of like an acceptable thing. That's like really sensible thing to do. But what your pension company does is put your money into investments that grow over time. Because in the long term, having money in cash savings is actually kind of risky, because things get more, things get more expensive with time. Like back in the day, a Freddo was 5p, now it's like 35p. So if you just got your money sitting in cash for 20 years, like you're just not going to be able to buy as much with it in 20 years time. So that's the reason why people invest as well.
Guess what, everyone? We have a brand new podcast partner to introduce you to. We are so excited to be working with Athletic Greens. We have been holding off from bringing on podcast partners until we found the perfect brands whose product we absolutely love and use to introduce you to, because we only want to advise you on the best. So I started to take Athletic Greens every single day because I was looking for a greens powder that was going to give me everything that I needed, because I personally suffer with blood sugar levels going all over the place, and I just noticed that I get dips in my energy a lot. And when I'm working on the podcast, trying to plow through all the editing and everything that we're doing, I would have dips in my energy that would really affect my focus and just how I felt. So I started taking Athletic Greens, and the biggest thing that I noticed was that my energy levels were completely balanced out. I wasn't getting uncontrollably hangry anymore. And it was really helping me maintain my energy at a consistent, sustainable level all day, so I could be way more productive, feel way better, and just feel so good.
Yes, we are so excited to be partnered with Athletic Greens. And my favourite thing about Athletic Greens is the fact that you don't need to think about what you're having each morning, because I used to always worry and stress thinking, what vitamins do I need to take? What supplements do I need to take? And how much of each one do I need to take? But Athletic Green covers all that off and takes away all the stress for you. So in just one scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. I mean, what more could you possibly want? And personally, for me, I felt the benefits of this in just a few days of using it.
Yeah, me too. And it's super, super easy to take. So you get all those benefits in just one scoop. When you order your Athletic Greens, they give you a really cute little water bottle that's already got all the measurements on there of how much water you need to mix. With the scoop, you just put it in, mix it, shake it up, and drink it, and you're ready to go. It's really low maintenance and really, really easy to build into your daily routine. And you know us. We all here at Find Your Feet, we love a good routine. We love a good morning routine. And I absolutely love waking up and drinking my Athletic Greens straight away on an empty stomach and hydrating with this. I feel so good.
And not only that, it is very lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, you can have Athletic Greens. Because personally for me, I am dairy-free, but Athletic Greens fit perfectly into my life.
Yeah, so whatever your dietary requirements are, they will fit into your lifestyle. One of my favorite things that Athletic Greens do is that they are constantly updating the ingredients and the dosage to keep up to date with the latest science and product development, so that they're making sure the greens powder that you are taking is the absolute best on the market. And you really can feel that it's the best because you feel amazing. But don't just take our word for it, guys. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 five-star reviews, and it's recommended by professional athletes and health experts. Tim Ferriss loves it, Andrew Huberman loves it, and we all know they are smart guys, so they know what they're talking about.
So, of course, we've got a lovely bonus for our listeners. So, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-boosting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do to claim this is visit athleticgreens.com athleticgreens.com/finding your feet. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/finding your feet to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
So head over to the show notes to get access to this link and try it out for yourselves. We absolutely love it. And my top tip is, if you are new to taking a greens powder, start with the dosage of half and build it up to the full scoop over like 3 days, just while your body adjusts to getting all these nutrients that you've probably depleted in. But we love it. So head to the link, athleticgreens.com/finding your feet. Okay, yeah, to keep up with inflation.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I've never invested before, but I have been starting to read more money books recently. I've just never cared about it before. I'm 25, just for anyone listening, but I feel like when you're younger, you don't really, I don't know, you just don't think about stuff like this. So I'm going to start rather than putting money into savings, like putting them into these long-term investment funds that just kind of like manage it for you and you just keep it in there. So like, what is for someone listening that's thinking, okay, I want to start doing this too, what is the mentality to have on it? You're saying long term. How long term, like, are we talking? Like, how long should you be thinking about keeping things in there for? Because I've heard as well, like, people, like when some parents do this, like with the children, they put away like literally like £10 a month or something into an account for them and then give it to them by the time they're 18 or whatever. And obviously that's only £10. You don't even feel the pinch of it. Like, it's nothing, you forget it's even happening. But like, they just put them in like those building society accounts. So they're just like, I don't think they really accrue that much interest or anything. Whereas I think now, with kind of what we know, it can be more valuable for people to put them in these like investment things, and you could give your child way more money because you're putting it in there for 18 years or something like that. But when you're saying like long-term sustainable investment, so if I want to start now, putting it in there and I'm not going to take it out, how long-term do you think I should be thinking, like mindset wise, like how many years?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. The general kind of rule of thumb to put away money is if you are not going to need to touch it for 5 years. And the reason that people say that is because, like I said, that things fluctuate a lot. So if you wanted it in 2 years' time, like things might be hunky-dory in 2 years when you take it out, or things might be like a bit squiffy and it might be worth less. But because in the long term, I can't say that word, but I keep trying to say it. The long term, like trajectory is up. Yeah, so it's like the kind of thing is, if you're diversified, you have lots of these different slithers in different companies, and it's for the long term, 5 years plus. Like the general, obviously, it depends on what's going on in the exact year that you might want to take the money out for some reason, but that's why the 5 year plus horizon is the one. But like the longer you leave it, basically, the better, because the more that money can make money, and then the money that money's made can make more money. So yeah, it's the longer the better, basically. But if it's more short term and you okay, I want to buy a house in 3 years, then that's something you probably would rather keep in a savings account.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
How much do you think someone should split their, like, just as general rule of thumb, again, like just general advice, but say like they're putting away like a percentage of their monthly salary into savings, so they want to start investing, and they're able to keep it in there for like at least 5 years, they're thinking long term. How much percentage wise do you think is good for people to be putting away into long-term investments, like percentage of their salary?
Yeah, there's lots of rules of thumb, and I think there's one that's like 50% goes on your costs, and it's like 30% goes on your like fun, and 20% goes into investing, like basically looking after future you. It might be 10%, it might be 5%. And I would say, even if it's like 1%, start with that, because then you are an investor and you are the person that does it. So don't let the amount hold you back, because a lot of to be said of the identity of doing it. And like, even if you have a tenner in there and you see it fluctuate and you see it grow, it's just such a different thing when you actually have your money working for you and you can see it happening.
Yeah, I think like opening your mind to thinking about your money as like little soldiers that you send out into the world that work for you as well. Because I think we just always just naturally have that mindset of, okay, to get money, I just need to work more. But like you said, you've had time where you've taken time off to look after family, for yourself, for your own well-being, and then to go traveling and stuff like that. And that's the kind of freedom that everybody would want. And when you are thinking about future you and you're doing these sort of mindset switches to start investing or whatever, you're basically allowing yourself to live that kind of lifestyle. Which is really important. So that's all really practical tips on investing. So thank you for sharing all of that. But we'd love to talk about what net worth is, like, because we always hear it, and you see celebrities, you type the name into Google, and what always comes up next to it is like net worth or who's the girlfriend or whatever. It's always like net worth. So people, I think, again, assume that net worth is just something that really wealthy people have or like famous people have. But what exactly is it? What is the definition of it for someone that's never heard of it before? And how do we need to think about our own net worth? Like, how should we be and why should we be tracking our own?
Yeah, so net worth is the amount of assets you have, basically, minus the amount of liabilities you have. So again, those words are like not very helpful. They're like very finance words. But so the examples of an asset might be, okay, I've got £1,000 in stocks and shares and I owe £500 on a credit card. So then your net worth would be £500. And there's also a lot of debate if like the house that you live in counts. I don't count. I don't actually own a home, but like I wouldn't count the home that I own because you live in it. It's not something that can like work for you, and it's not something that is accessible that you can use, basically, because you need somewhere to live. So that's the general definition of it. And why it's really important is because your net worth for me represents how much time freedom you can have. So, if your monthly costs, again, let's just use £1,000 because it's a bit easier for math, but like if your monthly costs £1,000 and you've got a net worth of £6,000, then you're like, okay, I can live for 6 months, basically. And that's how you've got like your net worth represents like 6 months of time that you can have. But it's also really important when you're looking at net worth to maybe look at what the split is. So if it's in cash, sitting in cash, or if it's like in things that are working for you to make more money. So that's something to look at as well.
Wow, I never knew that about net worth. I thought net worth was just the amount of money you earn. So definitely learned a lot there today. But moving on from investing and net worth and stuff, but thank you for everything you shared on investing, because I really feel like you are very good at helping people feel empowered and actually understanding like how simple it is to invest your money and then get all the rewards from it. But moving on to talking about properties, because obviously as we're growing up, I feel like one of the only things that's kind of urged on us in terms of like investing into something is investing into property. But what are your thoughts on investing into property? Is it actually worth it long term when you compare it to things like stocks and shares? And also, someone that's maybe like getting towards that part of their life where they're going to invest in a property, how can they know if they're actually ready or if they're actually just feel like they're being pushed by society, like it's time to buy property? How would they know if it's kind of like actually right for them and if the investment is actually going to pay off?
Yeah, I love that we're talking about this because this is one of those unquestioned assumptions. And like, I was totally the same as growing up. It's like, when you're going to buy a house, like this is the thing. And I think that is also because for like my parents' generation, that was like how they really put themselves in a really different financial position because they did buy a house. But then I feel like my generation is quite different and we have like a lot of different opportunities available to us. So it's a good thing to question. And I also think a lot of the reason that people want to buy a house, some of the reason is because they're like, I want something that's going to go up in value. And the thing that you kind of know the most about going up in value is houses, because that's what you see a lot, and like you've lived in a house, it's kind of more understandable. So if you get like investing, you're like, oh, actually there are other ways that I can make my money go up in value, i.e. things like maybe stocks and shares, then actually like the need for a house might be quite different, and it is kind of uncoupled a little bit from your financial future, because I have something else that's working for me and going up in value. So actually, like, do I need to buy is the reason I buy a house because I want a house or to live in and want to own it, or is it because I want something that's going up in value? So that's like really
Mm.
interesting to think about. And there are some, it's so personal, but there are some like rough rules that you can think about when you're buying a house. So rules of thumb you can use, which might be based on how much it costs compared to rent, or you might look at how much your house is as a in relation to your earnings, so like the ratio, or you might look at how long you want to live in a house for. So some people might be like, oh, if it's less than 10 years that you're going to be there, or you kind of intend to be there, then don't. And then it's also going to depend on stuff
Mm.
like your personal values. So how much do you value flexibility, and how much do you value like having your own place and being able to decorate it? And um, so for me, for example, right now I live in Lisbon, and I love having the flexibility. So like I love renting, and I think there's this real misconception that renting is dead money and it's like money that you've wasted.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Mm.
actually, like with me renting, I know exactly how much my outgoings are going to be every month, which is like really helpful. Nothing's going to go, if something goes wrong, you know, if the roof needs repairing, like I don't have to pay for that. So like it's
Yeah.
really helpful for budgeting, because I'm like, oh, this is like I just have one amount of money and that's the only thing I'm liable for. And I'm also not tempted to just like keep spending loads of money on like, oh, actually I'm gonna get a new, I want to upgrade the bathroom, you know, like I feel like houses can just like
Mm.
suck loads of money into them. And then also what it allows me to do is like if I'd have had to put a deposit down on a house, that means my money is tied up. So whereas if I'm renting, I can have that money working for me because it's not like sitting in a house that I live in. So for example, if I wanted to buy a place and needed to put like a 20 grand deposit down, by me renting, I haven't had to put in 20 grand. So I have like 20 grand more that I'm investing. And if that 20 grand is making 10% every year, actually that's making me 2 grand every year. So actually my cost of renting might not be as high as I think, because I'm like, oh, actually, no, my money's making money. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a totally different way of thinking about it, but definitely like
Mm.
question, yeah, why do I want a house? Like, I think I will want to own a house at some point, but I want to do it like when I know it's like a forever thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
until then, I'd rather have my
Yeah.
money working for me and like have a fixed amount every month. And that actually brings a lot of value in my life.
Hmm. Yeah, like the thing you always hear is like renting's a waste of money. You're just paying someone else's mortgage, blah 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 blah. But if you don't know where you want to live, then why would you not rent? Like, do you know what I mean? If you don't know where you want your forever home to be, then why would you not? And I think the way that our world is now is so different from like our parents' generation. Like you were talking to us before we started recording about like the you sort of you live this digital nomad life where you work online and you can go and move to Lisbon and live there, and you can kind of choose where you can look at the whole world and choose where you want to go and put yourself for however long you want to do because of these new opportunities to work online. And there's so many people that are doing this now, and a lot of people are like wanting to create their careers online so they have that freedom. This didn't used to be a thing that our parents had. They didn't even have computers, they didn't have laptops, they didn't have the internet. So it's like, I think that idea of having a home is because, it was like gives you that sense of security and tying your money into something. But like for me anyway, if like I don't have any desire to do it right now, I have no idea where I want to actually like root myself and live. And obviously I am still just 25, so I've got my whole life to figure that out. But, like that would just feel really restrictive to me. But like what you said, how you can use that money that you put for a down payment on a mortgage to go and put that into stock. So you still, I think it's like just a complete misconception. You think that you have no stability or security if you haven't put your money into like a house or property. If you rent, you're like, could just get kicked out or whatever. Like, the landlord might be like, I want to sell this house, so you have to move, and things like that. But actually we live in this digital world now, and we can start investing, like you said, with £1. You don't need to be super wealthy to have access to that. So you can still have that sense of security and like that your money's going into something that's growing, but you can just be doing that in stocks and shares, and you can live wherever you want in the world. You don't have to tie it into property. I think it's such like a pressure that so many people feel, and I think they limit their lives a lot by falling into it because it's just such this like blueprint of like, yeah, when you buy a house, like it's seen to be as well like a marker of success, but it's just like it's not, because if you don't want to do that, then you really are like tying yourself into something huge. Obviously you can sell it, but you might lose money. Like it's a massive commitment. So um yeah, I've got like I don't have a thing against it, but I am like I reject the pressure that society like puts on people to feel like they need to buy one, because I just think no, like, I have no idea where I want to live, but I think that's like exciting. Like you can go wherever, but I'm also excited about the thought that I can still build wealth like through investment, but just not sticking it into bricks and mortar in like a town or something I don't actually want to live in. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, totally.
all that fine with a partner that you don't actually really want to live with. I mean, sorry, it's a bit savage, but I feel like loads of people do that. They
Yeah.
end up like that pressure, and then like, okay,
And then
well,
that is pressure.
yeah, wasting money, renting is wasting money. So, well, let's not rent, let's buy. And then you tying yourself into a property with someone you're not actually that sure about. Loads of people do that.
No, they do.
Yeah, and I love what you said. It's like, and feel good about it as well, and be like, oh, this is a choice that I'm making. And actually, I love spending money on my rent because it means I have the freedom to do whatever, and it means I get to just pay a set monthly amount. And yeah, like telling yourself the story, I'm throwing money away and I'm paying someone else's mortgage probably isn't going to make you feel great. So like, just tell yourself the money story that feels
No.
good, and be like, oh my god, this rent is giving me, like, paying rent is giving me so much. And you might not feel like that, so don't have to like plaster over anything, but if you actually like spend some time thinking about it. And also it's really good to think about living costs, because they are like probably one of the most expensive things. So like really, yeah, take time to like unpick, yeah, that the stories and the default of, like you said, the pressure, like the pressure that you might be under to do things a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I think as well, though, like having these conversations is so important, because if people listen to this and understand that, oh, actually, I can put the money I was going to put on a deposit in stocks and shares, then it like releases the pressure of so many people asking as well, like, oh, have you bought a house? Are you thinking of buying a house? Like with the education of knowing that actually I don't need to buy a house, I can put it in stocks and shares, I can make more money. I feel like that in itself is coming from such an empowered place with money. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I know you said near the start to change your mindset on money, you should consume podcast books. I'm really curious to know, like, do you have any of your favorite people who talk about money, maybe podcasts, or any favorite books that you've read that made you really aligned with this work?
Yeah, such a good question. And there's like, I'll give 3 books. I love reading. But so the first, if you want to think about more like earning more money and like that kind of limitless mindset with it, I really love the book You're a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. And there's also a lot of exercise
Oh,
there
yeah.
that you can do, like writing a letter, like just stuff that makes you realize a bit more to the root of how you subconsciously think about money. And then a book that
Yeah.
really changed a lot of the way I thought was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And it's kind of like quite a classic in the like finance space, but that is more about
Mhm.
assets and investing and building wealth. And that like that was a thing that like really flipped how I thought about my whole like what to do with money strategy. And then the other one that I love is a book called The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. And it's like a little bit more of a kind of spiritual take on things, and she just has a really interesting perspective on money. And she kind of like used to work in a really high powered job, and then she was a fundraiser of money, so she talks a lot about the flow of money. And she just like does really cool things in the world, like really amazing stuff with rainforests and indigenous communities. And like, yeah, she's just a really interesting woman as well.
I've never heard.
Amazing.
I've read the Jensen Zero one, and I've heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I've not heard of that last one that you just mentioned. I'm just nearly finished reading The Secrets of a Millionaire Mind. I saw someone recommend that. Have you read that
Yeah,
one?
that's a goodie. That's a goodie as well.
Yeah, I feel like when I'm reading it, I feel like if it got published now, people would be like, "What the hell?" Because, like, the way that the world is now in terms of political correctness, some of the things that he writes in it are a bit
Yeah, it's
like,
quite
but it's
blunt.
because he's trying to like, yeah, he's trying to like, obviously emphasize as well the mindset differences that you need to adopt to think differently about your money. But it is, when you see past all of that, because it's quite an old school book, it has got really good tips in it about switching your way of thinking about how to make money work for you and all of that. But have you got any, like, is there any podcasts or is there any other finance sort of educational people that you like as well, that people could dive into? Because I feel like some people listening now might be like, okay, this was cool, this is great, I want to start investing or whatever. I know you're saying you don't like to recommend specific investment platforms and stuff like that, but where can people, apart from coming to work with you one-to-one, where can people go if maybe they don't have the resources to do that right now, but where can they go to take their education like a little bit further, to start learning more?
Yeah. So I don't talk about platforms right now just because there's so much, like there's a little bit behind it and I'm like, I can't fit it in a podcast properly. But if you want to hang out with me on Instagram, that's a really good place. And also I send a weekly email called the Wealth Weekender. And then in that I always share like a random thought of the week, a question and a link. So that link will always go to something that is going to help you with like your money or wealth education or about investing or like something that I'm basically want to help you get richer. That's like the whole aim of whatever link I share there. So yeah, if that sounds good, that's like a really good starting place, I would say.
Okay, cool. We will link, if you share with us your link to sign up to your mailing list, we'll put it in the show notes and link your Instagram as well. So
yeah, definitely going to sign up to that. I want all the tips.
I want the tips to get richer. So
thank you so much for joining us here today. I feel like I've learned loads.
Yeah,
I'm ready to invest.
Yeah, really amazing. So thank you for sharing everything with us today.
Oh no, you're so welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me and thanks for being just open to talking about the topic of money and wealth, because we just need more of it. We need more wealthy women in the world. It would change the whole world. Can you imagine?
I know, it really would.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting place to be now, thinking about the future.
So guys, I hope you're feeling more educated and knowledgeable on finances. You're feeling a bit more empowered, a bit more confident, and more clear about how you can make your money work for you, create a financially free future, and bring in more abundance into your life. But if you want to connect with Hannah, then check out her Instagram at This Is Hannah Mayfield. We've linked it in the show notes, and the link to her website and her mailing list and all the books that we talked about are in the show notes as well.
Yeah, really hope you enjoyed, guys, and definitely go give her a follow on Instagram and all that jazz, because she shares some really knowledgeable tips.
And if you did enjoy it, share it with a friend, put it in your group chat, spread the word. It's the best way to grow the podcast and get more people out there living their best lives with Finding Your Feet. And if you did really enjoy it, we'd appreciate it so much if you left us a review or a star rating on Apple and Spotify. That also really helps the show grow, and we love hearing your feedback and thoughts about the show.
Thank you for listening, guys, and we will see you next time.